Welcome to MCN. Now, Yamaha's MT-07 has been the go-to middleweight naked for nearly a decade now. But this year, 2023, that came along, the Honda CB750 Hornet, and it knocked the Yamaha off its perch. Now, the Honda is more powerful than the Yamaha. It's got better performance, it's got more technology, it's got electronics, it's more fun. And this was going to be the King middleweight naked of 2023. But then along came Suzuki with this new GSX-8S. So this is my colleague, Chris Newbiggin. Hi mate, fellow tester. And between us, up until today, we've ridden the bikes. You've ridden this bike and that one. I've had a limited amount of time on this, but you did the launch of this, didn't you, a couple of months ago?
Yeah, did the launch in France.
What was it like at the launch?
I was saying to you earlier, it was a funny thing, kind of going into it. You look at the specs as you do, you do all the research beforehand, and obviously it's down on power, it's more weight, and all these things that you kind of see in the social media comments that kind of paint a negative picture before you get there. And you get on it and kind of all that fades away. Because it's got less peak power, but it's got more torque.
Yeah.
And then that extra weight, although you do feel it over this Hornet, but it's it lends it a more secure feel. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel, and sort of after a day on it, I felt that I'd probably prefer the Suzuki, but it's kind of hard to say until you've got them back to back as we do now. So I kind of reserved a little bit of judgment.
Exactly.
So
I was really excited to ride this. I actually think it looks really cool. But like you say, on paper it doesn't quite match the Honda, but now that we've tested them back to back and we've dynoed them and we've put them on the scales.
Put them on the scales, yep.
So let's crack on with some facts and figures.
Yep.
So let's talk about the price first of these bikes. So what are we looking at?
Well, the Honda is $6,999.
Which is really cheap.
It is really cheap. It doesn't come with a quick shifter auto blipper, which the Suzuki does.
Yeah.
Although that's only something like 260 quid fitted.
Yeah.
So it's still got a fair advantage over the Suzuki on the value front.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then the Suzuki is $7,999, isn't it?
Okay. Are they similar on PCP?
There's what is it? We're about 10 quid different, I think. So,
right, so not a lot in it.
Not a drastic amount. Kind of less than a round of drinks.
I mean, this is going to be, if you're buying,
yeah,
this is going to be the story of the test. They're very close in almost every way, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we put these bikes on the dyno, didn't we? What happened in the dyno room?
So the Honda makes 88 horsepower at peak, and all but 55 pounds of torque. The Suzuki makes 76 horsepower and 53.7 pound-feet.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound kind of good for the Suzuki, but up to 7,000 RPM, the Suzuki's got a real advantage in both torque and power.
Right.
And particularly between, I think it's 5 and 6.5, it's got significant advantage.
Yeah,
so that kind of in the mid-range, the Suzuki kind of aces it. Really.
Right. And then we put them on the scales as well, didn't we? Full of fuel. What do they weigh?
Yep, full to brimmed. 202 kilos for the Suzuki. Honda is 192 kilos. So very similar to what they claimed, that there's that 10 kilo difference.
So from a pure sort of measuring the stats, the Honda kind of takes a bit of a lead at the moment, but as we all know, bikes are a bit different to ride than they are on paper, aren't they?
Yeah, it's about feel and sensation, isn't
it? Okay, well let's drill down. Talking of price, so what have these bikes got? What kind of bells and whistles has each of them got?
They're very similar. I mean, as we've mentioned before, the Honda doesn't come with a quick shifter auto blipper as standard. It is an option, and it still comes out cheaper than Suzuki. So the Suzuki has 3 ride modes. The Honda also has ride modes, but I think it has 4.
Yeah, because it's got a user selection. I mean, I don't know if you agree. I'd say that the actual rider aids for normal riding, you don't feel, do you?
No.
So there's no real difference between them.
No, I would say the Honda's ABS, you trigger that a little bit more often.
Exactly.
We'll also come on to it. The Suzuki's got firmer forks, so it doesn't bottom out and
suspension
trigger
driven, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. The dash, like you say, the dash is much better on the Suzuki as well, isn't it?
It's much clearer, and although the Honda has that extra user mode, the Suzuki, you can separate throttle and traction control response anyway.
Yeah.
So that's very easy to use. You can do it on the fly.
Exactly.
And also when you turn it off, it remembers your settings as well. If you've turned the traction control off because you're kind of giving it some, it doesn't put it back into nanny mode when you turn it back on after filling it with fuel. So that's a plus for the Suzuki as well.
So the Suzuki's kind of hitting back a little bit there. The electronics in general are similar on both bikes, but the ABS is better on this, the dash is better on this, and the interface is better on this, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
What about the other components? So both got Nissan calipers.
Yep, they're almost identical. They're the same disc size.
Yeah.
There's a very small difference in the calipers, but nothing major. They're both 4-piston radial Nissans.
Upside down forks, both non-adjustable.
Non-adjustable, yeah, fairly sort of basic inside, and preload adjustable only shock as well.
Yeah. Pretty cheap shocks, aren't they?
Pretty cheap shocks, but that's the case for everything in this class.
Exactly. This is on Michelin's, this is on Dunlop Road Sports.
Yeah.
I mean, they're better tyres, aren't they?
They are, yeah, although some Hondas come on the same road sports.
Exactly.
And there's no rhyme or reason why.
No, so yeah, lucky dip, isn't it? But you want the one with Michelin's. Yeah. And of course, the rear tyre is narrow on this, isn't it? 160 versus 180.
Yeah, so that'll save you a few quid when you come to change it.
Exactly. So let's move on. We've talked about the power they make on the dyno, but what about the engine character? They're both parallel twins, both make similar-ish power, so you would think they're pretty similar to ride, but they're not, are they?
No, they're not. I mean, Suzuki made a big noise at the launch about them sort of focusing on sort of real-world kind of sensibilities, really. I mean, with the Honda, they were saying, oh, it's designed by the same bloke who did the RCV this and the CRF that, and kind of really played on that kind of race-bred technology. Whereas the Suzuki, if you look at it, it's quite old-fashioned in its way, but kind of intentionally rather than just not trying hard enough. And they're focused on it being smooth and grunty at low revs, and that's what they've delivered on.
Exactly.
You can kind of let the clutch out with no throttle and just pulls away, and then it just picks up smoothly and grunts kind of. Yeah. So it's a very sort of close reflection of the dyno results, whereas the Honda is a little bit flatter lower down and kind of softer, and in some ways actually more user-friendly in certain situations. But you get more of a sense of the Suzuki's character from the off, really. Yeah, all the good stuff is at the top on that. It is, yeah. And I think that's why when we rode it at its launch and we weren't actually riding that quick, it didn't really shine. But then when we got it back to the UK and we played about at an airfield in one of our other videos, the top end of that is really exciting. So, but I agree, for kind of normal road riding, this has kind of got more about it, hasn't it? Yeah, in that sort of sensible-ish speeds, the Suzuki gives you that a bit more, I think. Exactly. Whereas this, you have to scream it and kind of be a bit naughtier. How easy are these bikes to ride? They're designed for newer riders in a way, aren't they? Even though they've got a fair bit of power, they're designed to be friendly, aren't they? They are, yeah. And again, they both are friendly. Like I said, the Suzuki's torque that lends it a certain kind of friendliness. It just kind of pulls from anyway. It doesn't really matter what gear you're in to a reasonable extent. The Hornet, you kind of have to dance on the gear lever a bit more, but equally that kind of soft low-end power of the Honda, it's going to be less intimidating for somebody who's just kind of ripped up their L plates and bought the first big bike. And from a chassis point of view, around town, they're both light. They both carry their weight well, don't they? They've got quite spacious riding positions, although that's a bit more cramped, isn't it? Yeah, I found, I mean, I'm kind of 6 foot tall and you're about the same. A little bit less knee room. And bum room. Yeah, back to front. Yeah. From tank to... You're not sitting on the back seat, don't you? Yeah. But all the controls are light, aren't they? They're just simple to ride through town. Yep. Which is what they're all about. So they're pretty similar in that point of view, aren't they? Yeah, slightly different characters, but you wouldn't necessarily say one is more difficult than the other. So once we're out of town and we want to hit the lovely country roads that we've been on today, how do these two bikes differ when it comes to handling? I mean, theoretically, they should be pretty similar. Both sit up and beg naked, both similar size engines. Yeah. Are they the same? No, that's probably the area where you kind of really feel where they start to separate, isn't it? Yeah, the Honda's skinny back tyre, lighter weight, it makes it kind of much more nimble. It kind of takes just a sort of gentle bit of cow steering and changes direction, tips into a bend kind of really sort of keenly. Sort of, not the problem as such, but its kind of limitation is the rear shock. I mean, I don't miss very many meals, and with my weight on it, it kind of sits down, it bounces, it responds to bumps more. Which kind of, it robs you a little bit of confidence mid-corner, or tipping in as well. As you let off the brakes, it kind of sits back down again and runs wide a bit. whereas the Suzuki is kind of firmer and more balanced. So you kind of load it up and you get more feel for it, even though it's got kind of lower spec, kind of less grippy tyres. You've got more of a sense of what's going on. You've got a bit more confidence in it just through that kind of mechanical grip.
That's right.
So it's kind of, the Suzuki wins it in that regard. I think kind of point to point, you'd probably be quicker on a twisty road on the Suzuki than you would on the Honda. I
agree. When I first rode this at the launch, it was almost too light and too nimble and too responsive. It feels like the front wheel's underneath you, and it's ultra fast steering. When we got it back to the UK with grippier tyres, it's fine, but it is a very fast steering bike. Almost feels like a smaller bike with a big engine, whereas this is almost the other way around. It kind of feels like a more grown-up chassis. The first impressions I had was it was slower steering, but much more neutral and dug in, like you say. You know, you feel the extra confidence from the wider tyre, and the ride quality is better. As you said, the braking performance is better because the forks don't bottom out. So yeah, I think handling-wise, A to B, really country roads, I'd want to be on this one. And build quality, kind of desirability. What would you have?
I think it depends how old you are.
So I mean, mine should be hearing aid beige then.
But I mean, the Suzuki's overall styling is a bit more aggressive. They've kind of hung it out there a bit. They've got this kind of funky graphics with the 8S on the side, whereas the Honda is a bit of a pulled punch, isn't it? So, I mean, we both kind of commented on the initial design sketches that were really aggressive, and then they've just kind of got the rubber out and rounded all the corners off and just
made it a bit sensible looking.
Yeah, it's
quite generic. If that was just sat in a line of bikes, I think, what is that? Is that a Z750? Is that a Hornet? Is that a CB? Or
it's just a black motorbike, isn't it?
Exactly.
It just fades away.
So I think desirability-wise, the Suzuki kind of edges it a little bit.
Yeah. There's a few areas where up close the Suzuki, particularly around the engine, it's quite a sort of bitty looking casting, and some of the finishes are a bit cheaper around there. But I think overall I prefer
nicer swing arm.
Nice swing arm. Yeah, it's aluminium on that. It's kind of straight steel box on the Honda.
So finally, we want to know if the Suzuki has beaten the Honda. Which one would you buy?
I think by now kind of people will have got a sense that they are difficult to split. It's kind of nip and tuck. And I think even the verdict, you can't definitively say, like we did with the Hornet and the MT-07, buy this one, this one's much better. I would say if you're a mature rider, or kind of you're not looking to do wheelies and things, which we are obviously, the Suzuki is a bike to have. That kind of mid-range grunt, it works well in sort of real world, not getting caught by the police type scenarios. Chassis better. I mean, if you wanted to ride the Honda hard, you'd be replacing the shock absorber and you'd be spending another 500-600 quid anyway. But what the Honda does have, if you are a real rookie, kind of just say straight off your test, that lack of sort of grunt at the bottom is going to be a bit less intimidating. Or if you're kind of sort of young folk and want to thrash the nuts off it, that top end of the Honda is more fun, it's more playful. But it's close to those, isn't it?
I agree. I think 80% of the time I prefer this, but for the simple reason this does amazing wheelies.
Yes.
I prefer that, but you kind of got to discount that, haven't you? But I think that, this is, I didn't think it would, because that is a class act, but this kind of edges ahead, didn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of pleasing as somebody who's bought a couple of Suzukis, had an SV650 and a Bandit 600 at various points, that they're kind of back on form and sort of building a really well thought out kind of bike for modern times, rather than just hashing over old technology.
Exactly.
I mean, that's their first new engine since, all brand new, not sort of an evolution of something else.
That's right.
Since 1999, which is just insane.
Yeah, it's really good to see him back, isn't it? Really good. So there you have it. The new middleweight naked king, the Suzuki's GSX-8S.